Welcome, everyone. Nice to see familiar faces and new folks here. My name, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Amy Jamrog, and I have been a financial advisor for 28 years, which is crazy to think of it, it's been that long, but quite a journey it's been of learning. And the whole point of us bringing this webinar to you today, and we've got a series of webinars, this is one of 6 that are coming, is to provide education around subjects that can be challenging, difficult, uncomfortable for so many people. And so today's topic is Money Conversations That Matter, a Corporate Woman's Guide to Family Finance. Long title, but the gist of it is this. I'm going to talk for about 45 minutes. I'm warning you now, my disclaimer is, this is a lot of information. It is not meant for you to take it all in and understand it all in 45 minutes, but what it is meant to do is provide awareness. If we can just hit on a number of topics that either you've been thinking about addressing or, oh, hadn't even thought about that one, what I would love for you to leave with is a to-do list. And your to-do list could be call us and we can help you. But what I want you to have at the end of this 45 minutes is an awareness of so many important money conversations that come up somewhere in life. And some of the subjects might hit home for you. Others might not apply to you at all, but listen anyway, because they might apply to someone you care about and you could share this content with them as well. So my team is here. Thank you all Jamrog Group folks for being here in support of this important topic and for being awesome women to work with. We will get started. So over this next 45 minutes, hopefully you're going to discover practical financial management tips designed specifically for corporate women, those of us who feel responsible for it all. This session is going to give you ideas to confidently navigate essential money conversations with yourself, your family, your significant other, your kids, and even your elderly parents. So I'm going to launch into 9 topics. 9 topics, 45 minutes. You can imagine we're going to move quickly here, and you're just going to get a big overview of some pretty important conversations that will come up in life or have already perhaps come up for you. I want to start with a story. A couple of years ago, I got referred to a new client. She's a physician, a surgeon. And when we met, she said, I got referred to you 3 years ago when I was in residency, and I knew I should have met with you. And the longer that time went on, the more embarrassed I was that I didn't call you. And then the more that time went on, the harder it was for me to call you. And she said, so now here I am meeting with you, and I'm just really embarrassed that I'm where I am, making the kind of money I'm making, and I feel really irresponsible. And so this conversation is really common. And where she felt irresponsible was this. She said, like, I'm a surgeon. I'm really good at my job. I don't understand money. I've never understood it. My parents didn't inform me about it. And so she said, I'm starting from the very beginning. And where I'm embarrassed is I have $400,000 in my checking account. And she said, the reason is I'm making money and I don't know where else to put it. So where I want to begin is topic number 1, which I call the financial balancing act, balancing among work, family, and figuring out your money. And what I want to start with is just two important things under this big subject of topic number 1. And the first is your plan starts today. Okay, let's just all declare, everybody on this call today, that things start today moving forward. And I say that and distinguish today as the beginning for those of you who need to just forgive yourself for what you haven't done, should have done, wish you did in the past. And let's just start fresh today with some new ideas and a new perspective. The second is to realize and recognize that so many of us, and growing up, were not taught about money, or girls are taught differently than boys. And so depending on how you grew up and what your parents may or may not have taught you about money, will really set the stage for how money goes for you. And so again, thinking about where you've come from, where you are today, let's just set the stage that it begins right now. So first and foremost, under this big subject of managing it all, I want to talk about taxes today versus taxes tomorrow. And again, these are going to be big topics, but I'm just going to give you a little tidbit into each of them to have you think, does this apply to me? Should I be putting this on my to-do list? So perfect timing, yesterday was tax day. Here we are thinking about deductions. And so many people focus on deductions today, taxes today. How do I lower my tax bracket today, this year in 2025? And if you've got a great accountant, they're thinking the same thing, right? Where can I help you with more deductions to reduce your overall tax burden in this tax year? Here's what I would have you just consider. That might be a fine strategy. But the more taxes that you defer paying today means that at some point in time, you may have to pay for them in the future. So be thinking about where your tax picture is today versus where you want it to be in the future. And maybe thinking about current taxes that we're paying, where do you think taxes are going? So the more that you take in deductions today, let's just say all of your 401k contributions are going into an account pre-tax. That's great. It lowers your current taxable income. But it also means that when you get to retirement, fast forward however many years that is for you, when you get there, all of that pre-tax money that you put away and everything that it's grown by is 100% taxable in retirement at whatever tax rates we are at that point in time. And so just consider that maybe giving up a little bit of tax deduction today might make a difference for you in the future, because then you could have some money that's either less taxable or not taxable at all when you get into retirement. So something to consider, put that on your checklist. Is that something that if you've been only focused on deductions, maybe start to shift the balance of those choices? The second that I want to say, especially to women, I see this all the time, is we're very responsible people. We're responsible for ourselves and a lot of other people typically. And we often plan so much for the future, but don't take the time to enjoy today. So you may be saving, and being super responsible and putting money away for retirement and college for your kids and maybe a second home that you want to buy. And you're in the grind, right? You are exhausted. You are stressed out. You are not enjoying life now. And if that's you, consider that you've got to save for the future in case you get there. But you've got to enjoy life today in case you don't. And we've seen too many terrible health situations, people dying prematurely, and just never enjoying and reaping the rewards of all of the money that they've worked so hard to accumulate. So if that is you, maybe starting to look at striking a better balance between, hey, I need to save for the future, but what if I carve out X number of dollars and just do something fun this summer or do something silly and frivolous with the kids just because. So consider, as you are thinking about and planning for your money and budgeting for the future and budgeting for the present and all of the cognitive load that comes with all of these decisions that you have to make, there are some really great systems, tools, and technologies that you can use to help you with this project. One of them is Rocket Money. It's a free app. If you haven't tried it, it's a really cool, organized app and a way to look at all of your cash flow in one place. It's free, but you can also upgrade to a different version of it. If you're trying to really pay attention to income in, income out, and tracking your household finances, QuickBooks Online is an excellent tool to do that. It takes a little bit of work to get it set up, but once it's set up, when it comes time to getting your taxes done and running reports for your CPA, you're going to feel like a ninja because you'll be so organized if you're learning how to use these tools. And the other, if you're just getting started, is an app called YNAB, which stands for You Need a Budget. And if you're just getting started and feeling overwhelmed by all of this that I'm talking about right now, these apps and tools can make the job a lot easier than you trying to start with an Excel spreadsheet and putting all things in manually. Just know that there's so many great tools out there now that can make the project a lot easier for you. You're going to hear me refer to this phrase throughout this today, which is who, not how. So many times, if you find yourself stuck in the conversation, like, how am I going to do that? How am I going to figure this out? How am I going to plan for this, or that? If you are stuck in the how question, or if you find yourself somewhere procrastinating, like the surgeon who put off meeting with me for 3 years, if you're just asking yourself how and you are stuck, the question to ask yourself that might get you in better position is who. Not how am I going to do this, but who can help me get it done. And you may be in a position where you are becoming more successful, making more money, you've got more on your plate than ever before, kids are a huge demand. You may have to start outsourcing and building your team of professionals. And there's no shame in that. It actually is a real privilege to be able to outsource and get professionals to help you with your taxes, if you're still DIYing your taxes, your finances, your estate plan, saving for college with coaches for your kids to help them plan for their college experience, right? A lot of experts are out there really, really good at what they do, and it may be time for you to start considering outsourcing to them. So that's big topic number one, which is just the integration of all of these things you have to deal with. How do you even begin to start getting organized around this? And I would say, who, not how, is a question to ask, and then look at the resources and technology you can use to get started. Topic number two, and this is something that I see, it doesn't matter how successful, how sophisticated clients are, everybody has to start with an inventory. Inventorying everything you've got, getting really clear about what you have and where it is, who owns it, who's the beneficiary of it, really understanding all of your assets, your real estate, your accounts that you're currently contributing to, old 401k accounts and old IRA accounts that might be in other places. The first thing to do in starting to feel in control and feeling responsible about your finances is to take an inventory of your finances. The next piece under this, under the inventorying, is not just what do you have, but what do you have access to? And in this area, I'm referring to your employee benefits, right? If you're a successful corporate woman and you're making money and you're building your career, then more and more benefits tend to become available to you. So this is where you want to start to understand your executive compensation package. Maybe you have non-qualified deferred compensation as an option. You might not know what I'm even talking about, but it's worth taking a look at and saying, okay, let's get a screenshot of everything you have available through your work. And are you taking advantage of these things? Does it make sense to take advantage of all of them, some of them? Well, it depends, right? You may have stock compensation. How do you plan for the variability in your income? If your stock price is all over the place, how do you manage the taxes around that? What should you save into pre-tax? What should you be saving into after tax? There are things called like an 83B election. This is a really important distinction between ordinary income and capital gains taxes, and you've got to make these important decisions. You might start thinking, how the heck am I going to figure all this out? And this is where you should ask who. Who knows this? Who can help me figure this out? HR can help you, and of course, financial advisors, accountants can help you with this as well. So just taking an inventory of everything you've got can be a daunting project, but I promise you, doing it now and really understanding where all of your things are is so much better than something terrible happens, some emergency happens, something happens to your health, you become incapacitated, and no one knows where your stuff is. So especially if you're married, between you and your partner, you and your spouse, make sure you're getting this inventory together and that each of you knows what the other has. Oftentimes you have yours, they have theirs, we have ours. Understanding where it all is and doing that in some kind of aggregated app can be very, very helpful. So that's topic number two, and inventorying everything you've got. Topic number three is estate planning essentials. And we get this question all the time. Who needs an estate plan? And what I can tell you is pretty much everyone. And if you don't have an estate plan that you've created yourself with an attorney who can help you with this, you do have a default estate plan depending on what state you live in. So that default plan might not send things to the beneficiaries you were intending. And so it's very important that if you have any money whatsoever and any intentions at all for your assets, that you have an estate plan. Everyone should have the following basic documents in place: a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, a living will that just sort of says where you want your things to go and what your wishes are. Um, you may need a will also. A basic document is a will. You may need a trust. Do you have minor children? Do you have kids with special needs? Is there anyone that you would be leaving money to at your passing who has addiction issues, money issues, right? That you would want to protect the person from that money. And a trust can protect money for the intended beneficiaries. Does everybody need a trust? No, but a lot more people need one than they think. Trusts aren't just for wealthy people. They're for people who have very specific intentions for those beneficiaries. And sitting down with a great estate planning attorney who can walk you through each of these documents and help you understand who you're choosing for guardians for your children might be very different than the person you would choose to oversee the money for your children. I always say, sometimes the best guardians for the kids are the worst money people. And so you might just be thinking about two different people. We see so often clients have draft documents of their estate plan, but not executed documents. They haven't signed on the dotted line because the number one thing that trips them up is who's going to be the guardians for the kids. And because they can't decide, they do nothing. And that indecision is the worst thing that you can do. So really taking the time to be responsible for this important part of your estate plan and making sure that you're really thinking about who you care about, who you want to care for, the people you care about, and what your intended wishes are. Now, this leads to a really important subject called beneficiary designations. We could spend an hour purely on this topic alone, but here's what I want you to think about. When was the last time you went back and looked at the beneficiaries on every account you have, every old investment account you have, every life insurance policy you may have, all of the things somewhere back in time you designated a beneficiary for? Here's what we have seen when we've helped clients go through a beneficiary audit. Your ex-husband is still named on an old 401k that you haven't looked at in 20 years. Your dad is the beneficiary of your group life insurance policy, and your dad died 7 years ago, right? We see parents still named in plans that are very outdated documents, and now you're married, right? Your spouse should be probably the intended beneficiary of those accounts. So we want to make sure when you go back in time and take a look at each of the accounts that you have named a beneficiary that is still alive and someone you still like. Very important. We've seen some really, really interesting old, outdated beneficiaries that could end in disaster if somebody passes away and their money goes to their ex-spouse, not their new spouse. So just take the time to take a look at that. Now, here's an important distinction. In your estate plan, you might say, leave everything to my sweetheart. 100% of everything I have goes to my sweetheart. Okay, great. But if you don't coordinate the estate plan and your will with your 401k, your IRA, your life insurance policy, each of those accounts has to align with whatever you have in the will. So your will could say, leave everything to my sweetheart. But if your old 401k still says, leave it to my ex-spouse, that's where it's going. Those documents, retirement accounts, IRAs, life insurance policies, those are contracts. And the beneficiary of each of those contracts is what stands. So you might say XYZ in your will, but you now also have to go back and coordinate your beneficiaries to make sure that they are aligned with your estate plan. So one of the things you might all be adding to your to-do list right now is beneficiary audit for yourself and for your significant other. Topic number 4, what to know before getting married or what to know before getting remarried. This, again, could be its own topic for an hour-long discussion because there are significant pros and cons. Now, not to your love, like all love and romance aside, this is purely a financial conversation. But keep in mind that when you get married, a lot of things change in your tax picture. So for example, We had clients who both significant income separately with student loans. And when they got married, they didn't realize that their income-based student loan repayment plans, when they combined their income, completely changed what they had to pay in their student loan payments. They said, had we have known that, we would have waited to get married until the student loans were done, because it really screwed up their cash flow and delayed how long it would take for them to purchase a house. So some of the things to think about in getting married or getting remarried: income-based student loan repayment, credit scores, who's liable for what. You might be in love and want to get married, but if one person's credit is terrible and one is great, and you go to apply for a mortgage, that might really hurt you. So just be thinking about full transparency prior to getting married, and understand the financial implications to once you do become married filing joint. A lot of things change, including perhaps your tax bracket and what you're able to contribute to in terms of retirement as well. Now, on the pro side, when you get married, you may have better health insurance options. You may be eligible for different benefits through a spouse. When you are married federally, if I have a retirement plan and my spouse has a retirement plan, when one of us predeceases the other, that money just rolls over into the other spouse's plan, and it's not taxable until you begin to spend it. If you are not married, you can still be each other's beneficiary, but that is not a spousal rollover, and there are very different tax impacts to not being married and inheriting a retirement account. So important to know. If you have a pension, if you are Social Security eligible, there are spousal benefits to both of those. But if you are not married, there typically are not. So if somebody's getting $4,000 a month from Social Security and passes away, a spouse can be the beneficiary of their spousal Social Security or their own, whichever is the higher of the two. If you're not married, not eligible. So some things to think about is: how old are you? What is at stake? Does it make sense to be married? Does it not make sense to be married? On the flip side, we just had clients who got married in their 70s. They got married, meaning they had a fantastic wedding that we all went to, but they didn't federally file. They are technically not married. And the reason for that is long-term care planning. One has significant assets, one does not. If they're married, those assets become eligible for long-term care planning. If they're not married, then the person without any money won't put the other person with the money's assets in jeopardy. So tricky subjects. Like I said from the very beginning, you're going to get a lot of information today. We're not going to solve anything, but I just want to put some of these things on your radar if you're thinking about getting married or getting remarried. There's a lot to think about, and it's worth even perhaps running a mock tax return, single versus married, and seeing the tax impact of what that would be. Sometimes it's really positive, but it's important to know before you just tie the knot and then find out after the fact, oh, wish I would have known that prior to. So be thinking about that. Now, topic 5 is one I hope you never have to call me about, but it will apply to about 40% of individuals, and that is the topic of divorce. If you or anyone you know is contemplating divorce, there are 3 really important conversations that we think, we are biased, but from all of the experience that we've had in helping clients navigate divorce, there's 3 important conversations that need to take place. And here's what's going to be a surprise to you. Conversation number 1 is the conversation to have with yourself, right? To really, really by yourself introspectively think about, what is my life going to look like post-divorce? Do I want to stay in this house? Do I want to move? What do I want for my children? Am I what does my cash flow look like? What do I need to make my lifestyle work? These are big discussions that first having the reality check with yourself and what your life may look like is where you begin. So conversation number 1 is the conversation to have with yourself before you have conversation number 2. Conversation number 2, we believe very strongly, should be with a financial advisor. And here's why. Once you go to the attorney meeting, it gets very chaotic. Once you're in a mediation, it can also be stressful, confusing, like really hard to make good financial decisions when you're in the midst of all of the stress that comes with divorce. Having a conversation with a financial advisor first helps you get grounded. We help you take inventory of everything you as a couple have, and then we start to rebuild a financial plan for you as a solo person. We can test if you get 50% of the 401k versus not, if you have to give up this much in alimony versus not, what you need for college for the kids, if you divide the home equity versus keep the house. We will run all the different scenarios for you so that you have a sense of what you need, what you're able to give up, and where your negotiation is possible. Then you go meet with a divorce attorney. But when you do that, you're going in confident, informed, like really clear about what to ask for, what not to ask for, what you want to keep, and what you can give up. And that doing it in that order, we've seen save so many billable hours, so much heartache, and so much confusion from having to go back and forth with a million different legal scenarios. If we can at least help you financially, or your own financial advisor can help you financially get prepared, then that third conversation is the conversation to have with the divorce attorney, the mediator, or the collaborative lawyer. I keep thinking about this referral that we got from a divorce attorney. She sent this woman to us. They had just settled the divorce. She was getting all of the money that she had agreed to. And the attorney said to me, "I'm sending Susan to you. I sure hope she has enough money." And I thought, oh, it's too late. She already agreed to and signed the documents. Had she met with us before, we would have known whatever she was agreeing to was the right amount for her. So it's just about being confident, being informed, and really having the kind of clarity that you need to go into these tough emotional conversations with that ammunition. Good news is divorce is on the decline for people in their 30s and in their early 40s, and it's because they're getting married later and they're postponing having kids until later. Bad news, gray divorce is on the rise. People 55 and older are getting divorced at a much higher rate than ever before. So just know that this is a common thing that you might hear among your friends. And if that's the case, you've got some great advice to give them, which is have a conversation with yourself, have a conversation with a financial advisor, and then have the conversation with the divorce attorney. Okay, topic number 6. How are we doing on time? Oh, perfect. Topic number 6 is protecting your family with the right amount of insurance. And this is an area where we see a lot of people confused. Not sure what kind of insurance they need, not sure the different types of insurance and how to distinguish among them, and so often just very underinsured. So the insurance list for you to consider is the proper amount of life insurance, the proper amount of disability insurance, and make sure that the disability insurance that you have will last as long as you plan to work. So some old policies used to only go to 65. Some other policies you can buy up and they'll pay you if you become disabled up to age 70. So really worth looking at your trajectory, how long you plan to work, and until your net worth gets to a point where you could self-insure, having disability insurance in place is really important, as well as life insurance. Then there's a subject of long-term care. Nobody likes talking about this, and I understand it, but once you talk about it, deal with it, and get the right insurance in place, then I promise you're going to feel so responsible that this is off your plate. So long-term care, whether you need long-term care insurance or a different way to fund for long-term care, there are very creative strategies right now that you can look into. And this is the who, not how category. Who is someone skilled in this that can help you think through it and really put a good plan into place for your family, as opposed to trying to Google this and figure it out yourself. We often see people with 1, 2 homes, significant net worth, and not an umbrella policy, not an extended liability policy, that if something ever happens to somebody, a slip and fall, at your house next to your pool, you've got your basic homeowners insurance in place, but an umbrella policy could be an extra $1, $2, $3, $5 million of liability coverage. That's important to have in place, depending on what your net worth looks like and what's at risk. Very inexpensive coverage to have. It's attached typically to homeowners insurance, but this is a good time to check in with your property and casualty agent. Whoever does your car insurance, homeowners, umbrella, they're the people who can help you think about that extra liability insurance. Then there's FSA versus HSA, your flex savings account versus your health savings account. So many people mix up these two. Your flex savings account is the use it or lose it account. That's the one that you put money into this year. You have to get yourself reimbursed from that account before the year is over. There's a little extension after the first of the year for this, but if you don't use that money and reimburse yourself in time, you do lose it. An HSA is a health savings account, which is attached to your high deductible health insurance plan. And with an HSA, we see a lot of people utilizing it. You've got kids with $6,000 worth of orthodontia and unreimbursed things that come from the medical account. Your HSA can be used. You put pre-tax money in, you can take the money out tax-free, but here's something to think about. If you're in high earning years, could you fund your HSA and not take the money out this year? Because this is not a use it or lose it. Your HSA can actually be saved into for years and years and years and years, and then that can be an additional source of savings for you in retirement. This could be huge. If you've got big medical expenses, if you've got medications, if you've got things you're anticipating having to pay for in retirement, maybe it makes more sense to fund the HSA and hold onto it rather than use it every year. So put that on your list of things. If you're funding an HSA and using it year by year, yes, it helps you with your deductions this year, but would it be perhaps better utilized to save it and use it in retirement? Who knows? Worth looking at in your plan. So in addition to this concept of a beneficiary audit, we also recommend an insurance policy audit for you to go back and kind of look at all the insurances that you have and make sure that they still are meeting the needs that you have, especially if you've become more successful, income is higher, there's more at stake and more at risk. Oftentimes you have to upgrade your insurance to keep up with you. So that's topic number 6. Topic number 7 is the mental load of family finances, right? How do you manage all the family finances and the decision fatigue that comes with all of this? So we recommend that you set up a meeting, either a meeting with yourself or a meeting with your spouse on some kind of regular cadence. Doesn't necessarily have to be weekly, but even a once a month meeting to say, okay, first Sunday of the month, we're going to sit down after kids go to bed and we're just going to review the household finances, looking back on the last month, looking ahead, and just making sure you're staying on top of all income in versus expenses out and being really clear and transparent about the financial plan that you have. This could also be another who, not how. If you're sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? Me sitting down with my spouse once a month, once a quarter to talk about these things, like it'll never happen. We are terrible in this conversation. Like we need a mediator. Perfect. This is a who, not how. Who could help you have that conversation? Typically, a couple times a year, it's your financial advisor who can help you navigate these difficult conversations and get a plan into action for you. And then build in some accountability between your meetings to know, okay, you're doing this, I'm handling this, you're going to get the estate plan updated. See you in September where we'll check in and see how you're doing to your how your accountability is for your plan. Sometimes it's helpful to have an outside person mediating that conversation. So this could be a who that you want to add to your team to help you have those regular meetings about your finances. And here's, I want to say something about this too. Jessica and I were just talking about this the other day. So frequently, especially among women, smart, successful women, we feel like we should be able to do all this ourselves, that we should be able to utilize resources and Google something we don't understand. And by bringing in outside people to help us, oftentimes we feel guilty. It's like the first time you hire somebody to clean your house and you think, is this okay? Should I be paying someone to do that? Yes, of course. Give yourself that free time. You deserve it. But You sometimes may have to just forgive yourself of the guilt you feel around all this. Should you be able to do all these things? Sure, you could do all of these things, but would it be more enjoyable, less stressful, and a little bit easier for you to give up some of this cognitive load, not have to figure it all out yourself, and then bring in the professionals to help you navigate these conversations, especially for the people who just do this all day long? These are easy conversations for us to help you with, but it's really often very difficult to just have these conversations alone and try and figure out big financial decisions without some outside guidance. So that's number seven. Topic number 8, got 8 and 9 to go, and then we'll open up to questions. Topic number 8 is planning for your kids' financial future. Now, this one, we're going to bring in a lot of parenting ideas. If we were to open up this discussion, everybody's got different ideas about how to teach your kids about money, what you should give your kids versus what you can give your kids, how to fund for college. So let me just give you a couple of highlights here and a couple of perhaps to-dos for your to-do list. The thing I would have you think about first is, what do you want your kids to learn from you about money? And I think before you can even answer that, ask yourself, what did you learn from your parents about money? And how does that answer go for you, right? Sometimes it's positive. Like, my parents really taught me great money fundamentals that I want to pass on to my own kids. But you might say, geez, money was so dysfunctional in our household. We never talked about it. We learned nothing about it. I don't want to repeat that for my own kids. And so think about what you want your kids to learn from you, and understand that kids start learning the basics of finances and money around age 6. So it isn't too soon to start talking about money, teaching kids how to save for something that they want. But it's really important that if you are in a couple, you as a couple get really aligned around this, because we have seen when couples can really undercut each other in these conversations, or I'm a no, but go ask your dad about that. Then you just set up a really weird money dynamic within the family. So try to get aligned on this. And if you are divorced, as hard and annoying as it might be, see if you could possibly get aligned with your ex on this too, so that there could be some consistent money lessons between the two households, especially if the kids are young. When it comes to saving for college for your kids, this is a tricky one, and we've seen this go really poorly in some situations where parents have not saved properly. They're just not prepared for the extremely high ticket that college is going to cost their kids. Then they let their kids go apply to any school they want. Then the kids get in, and now the parents don't know how to fund for that. And they make crazy financial decisions like, well, I want them to go to the school, and so let's just remortgage the house. Let's take money out of our retirement accounts. Let's pay taxes and penalties because we have no other choice but to fund it. Or let's just take out $300,000 in student loans and postpone our own retirement. So the sooner you can start to think about this, the younger your kids are, even before you have kids. If you want to have this philosophical conversation within your relationship, it's so important, because if you can be realistic about what you can afford to pay for college, and if you can be realistic to not have your kids graduate with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, which will set them back a significant period of time for their own financial future, let's try to be more realistic. We can afford this. If you go to these schools, you'll graduate with no loans. If you choose something else, this is how much it's going to cost every month after you graduate to pay for in a student loan. And if it's $1,700 a month, geez, that's really important for the kids to understand. Like, that's a mortgage payment. You might not be able to buy a house for years because of the student loan debt. You parents might not be able to retire till you're 74 because of the student loan debt that you might take on. So just have a realistic conversation about what's affordable, what's not affordable, and then have that candid conversation with your kids before you start getting on college campuses and they fall in love with the $89,000 a year school with no grants, no loans, no scholarships, no nothing. And then you have to either say, so sorry you got into that school and we can't send you there, or you make a crazy emotional financial decision about it. A couple resources regarding this subject and just the subject of money and kids. A book recommendation that comes highly recommended by us is a book called The Price You Pay for College by Ron Lieber. A great book to read. It will really reframe perhaps what you've traditionally thought about college. The next is, if you're teaching your kids about money, Greenlight is a great resource if you haven't used it yet. It's an app, it's amazing. It has podcasts associated with it. Within the app, there's a whole learning section. There's a financial literacy game. The whole thing is very gamified. It's great for kids. They love it. And it takes, again, the burden off of you to have to teach all of these things, because there's technology and apps that are already set up to do that for your kids. And you can learn this with them. If you have teenagers, there's a great section on the Fidelity website, and it's about opening up youth accounts. There's online lessons in the app for this as well, but Greenlight's more for younger kids, and for teens, there's some better resources for them that meet them where they are. Paying kids an allowance, whether or not you decide to do this, like, these are all big decisions to make within the family. And just know that how you teach kids about money as early as possible, these are lessons that they're going to take with them forever. And so just know that you don't have to be wholly responsible for this. This is another who, not how. Who can help you with this? There's great apps, great technology, great podcasts, and of course, go to your team, which is your financial advisor, your CPA, and your attorney. Okay, last subject, and then we'll open up for questions. This is one of my favorites because it's really emotional and it's really hard for people, but once you can navigate this, it could make all the difference in your family. And this is navigating the tough conversations with your elderly parents. Cannot tell you how many times we see adult children saying to us, well, no, I don't know what my parents' plan is. I mean, I would never ask them about their money. I don't want them to think I'm wanting to know about my inheritance. I don't want to offend them. I don't want to ask them about death. I just don't want to upset them. So no, we don't talk about that. And then at the same time, if we go to the elderly parents and ask them the question, they'll say, oh, I would never want to bring up the subject of death and dying with our kids. I don't want to upset them. No, they would never want to have this conversation. So no, we just don't talk about it. And I promise you, both generations are craving the conversation. Both want to bust through whatever you haven't been able to talk about in the past. Both want to know, are my parents going to be okay? And the parents want to know, are we doing it right and leaving a legacy for the kids after having worked a lifetime to build what we have? So being able to have that conversation with your elderly parents is super important. Understanding who their team of advisors are, because they might not be yours. You know, we see a lot of times elderly parents have elderly attorneys and elderly CPAs. They might not be great with technology. They might not be paperless. And so it also might be a time for you to help your parents start to perhaps build a different team of advisors, maybe even start to transition to your advisors if you're the one that's going to be responsible for them, if you're the executor, if you're power of attorney. So just be thinking about this. And if you can have the conversation with your folks about their intentions for their money, their beneficiary audit, who's going to get which of the things, which of the houses, which of the accounts. And I say this because it's also really critical. So many people, after their parents pass away, say, I wish I would have known this to talk to them about this in their lifetime. We wouldn't have done it this way. And what I mean by that is not all money is created equal. And when you look at yourself and your siblings, right? Let's just say it's you and your 3 brothers and sisters that are the beneficiary of your parents' money. The tax brackets that each of you and your siblings are in matters, because there's some money that will be coming from your parents that's super taxable to you if you're in a high tax bracket, but maybe not so taxable to your sister who works in a nonprofit or is a school teacher. And so not only understanding the inventory of what your parents have, but also being really deliberate about who's getting what, because more tax might be paid that is not necessary. We've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes for clients just by doing some simple beneficiary shuffling and saying, look, Home equity is going to go to the person in the high tax bracket, and the retirement account is going to go to the person in the low tax bracket, and everybody's going to save money in this. And when the elderly parents really understand this, they're even more excited because it just means more money to the kids, less to taxes. Somebody said, if you don't do this planning, right, you have 4 children right now. If you don't do this planning, you actually have 5 children. You have the 4 biological kids you've got, and you have 1 unintended 5th kid, which is the IRS, right? There's a lot of money that goes to taxes, not necessary with some proper beneficiary planning. But it takes being brave. It takes being courageous. Somebody has to open up the conversation, and it could be you. You could be the who, but it might not be. And so sometimes it's helpful to have the estate planning attorney help navigate that conversation, letting the financial advisor help have the family meeting around some of these subjects. And I'll just share two last quick things with you in terms of legacy and why this could be so important to have this conversation with your folks. Earlier than later is better. When they're healthy is better. But 2 questions to ask them. Number 1 is there anything on your bucket list? Is there anything that you wanted to do or accomplish in your lifetime that is not yet done? And can we help you with this? This is a great who, not how. Who can help them with some special things on their bucket list? And some of these things are not so grandiose. They're very, very simple. But just by asking that question, you might be able to make something really, really special happen for them. And the last is to ask your parents if they've done any work on their obituary. I know this will sound a little morbid, but I promise you, if approached in the right way, help your parents, sit down with them, and together write the obituary. And here's why. After they pass away, when it becomes your job to put together all of the pieces of their lifetime, this can be overwhelming, daunting, and at a time when you're really emotional. And you might feel like you're just not capturing all of it, or is this what they really would have wanted me to say? Instead, if you take the time to sit with your parents, or your parent if you don't have both of them, and help them with their obituary, help them gather all of the important facts and accomplishments of their lifetime, it can be one of the most special conversations you can have with them because it's a trip down memory lane for them. It has them look back on a lifetime of accomplishment, and you capture all of it for them. And now it's just a project that they can put to the side and not have to worry about, nor do you. So I would highly recommend, if you don't put it on your to-do list yet, to just have that conversation with your folks and be helping them with that project, because it can actually be really beautiful instead of being overwhelming. So speaking of overwhelming, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna open up to questions. This is a lot of information. Know that over the course of the year, we've got 5 more webinars coming with other specific topics. So if you want to just keep tuning in, you'll continue to learn more and continue to add to your to-do list. But I'm happy to take some questions from anybody. I think Bailey may help me navigate the chat. If you've got a question and you want to unmute, you can do that. Or if it's easier, just put your question in the chat. I'm happy to answer it for you.
Yep. So I can address the first question that came in about whether or not this webinar is recorded. It is, and we do intend to send it out. So you will have this to reference. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to unmute and ask, you can just raise your hand. I'll be monitoring the list and I can unmute you so you can speak. Otherwise, feel free to drop them in the chat.
And here's, I would just add one other thing. You know, some of these subjects are extremely personal. So you might be triggered by something that I said and think, I have a question about that. I am not going to ask on this recorded webinar. Totally fine. Feel free to reach out to me or to Jessica directly, and we're happy to answer your questions for you if you don't want to publicly ask something personal in this space. Oh, inquiring minds. Any questions from any of you?
All right.
Harold Sexton. Yep.
Yeah, hi. This was awesome. Could you elaborate a little bit? You were talking about when you have different tax brackets in a group of siblings and how you might structure that. Could you give that your example maybe of that?
Sure thing. So I'll give you an example from one of our clients. They had a husband and wife in their late 70s with 2 kids. One was a doctor and one was a school teacher. And they were leaving 50-50 of their home equity to their son and daughter, 50-50, whatever was going to be left in their retirement accounts. Well, son is in a super high tax bracket, daughter is in a super low tax bracket. If they leave their retirement account to their daughter, she'll pay minimal taxes on that. If they leave their retirement account to their son, he'll pay 40% tax on it. And they didn't know that. Now they also have an equal amount of home equity. The home equity could go to their son in a very high tax bracket, and there is no tax on the home equity. So all they had to do was a little shift in their beneficiaries. Instead of 50-50 on the house and 50-50 on the retirement, they switched it. It was like 80-20 on the retirement account to their daughter, and then 20-80 on the home equity to their son. And that made a huge difference in the overall taxes because of that situation. And it's something you have to keep monitoring, right? Because people's situations can change. People could get married and end up in a very different financial situation. People could get divorced and end up in a different situation. But if the family is willing to have that really clear conversation about the tax situation of each of their kids, it can really make a difference for the amount of legacy that gets left behind. Hope that helps.
All right, Jenny.
Jenny, do you have a question?
You just have
I
to
have a
unmute.
question. I have
Sure.
a question. Okay. If the first, okay, A, B is couple, A divorced from B, and A remarried to C. Okay. I know stay how many years? Is it 5 years the C can get the A retirement like 401k? So I want to clear that question. Thank you.
Sure. I'm not sure I understand the question. But I will address that it's really important that people understand when you have retirement accounts, the rules have changed in the last couple of years. It used to be that if you had a 401k or an IRA and you're leaving that retirement account behind, now it's one thing to leave it to your married spouse, but beyond each other, when you leave money to your kids, nieces and nephews, anybody who's not your legally married spouse, that money is has to come out of that retirement account over a 10-year period. And so that means that that's additional ordinary income to the recipient. So let's just say I die and I leave $1 million to my niece, right? Not my spouse, but my niece. That $1 million has to come out of that account over a 10-year period. And it's taxed as ordinary income if it was a pre-tax retirement account, which means if she divides it evenly over a 10-year period, it's $100,000 of additional income to her household, which could move you into higher tax brackets, which could change your FAFSA forms, which could really, I mean, no one's complaining about $1 million inheritance. However, it's important to understand how these things are taxed and really think specifically about beneficiaries. I do want to add one more thing here. We didn't talk about philanthropy, which is a great conversation. We're going to have a whole webinar on philanthropy in September. But if you are charitably inclined, keep in mind when you're looking at your beneficiary designations that your people may have to pay taxes on your retirement accounts, but charitable organizations do not. So when you're looking at beneficiary designations, if you have charitable intentions, you want to name your retirement account the beneficiary that goes to a nonprofit because they can receive that money, no tax. And you want to look at your other assets that would be less taxable to people and divide that up differently. So again, it takes some real deliberate thinking about ultimately what's the legacy you want to leave behind, who or what organizations do you care about, and then your advisors, your attorneys, your accountants can help you designate the right accounts to the right people or the right organizations. So I hope, Jenny, that answers your question.
Yeah, it's very helpful. But thing is like, okay, if I divorced like 5 years ago, then now is the time I will get married. Okay, with that, for example, when I get retired, for example, I'm 60 years old.
Mhm.
I know I'm not that, but how long my my spouse, my husband can take over if I pass away.
Oh,
And-
okay. I
Okay.
understand your question. Yep.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Please.
Thanks for
But before
clarifying.
it's very helpful too. Thank you. Please.
Yeah, you're welcome. When you get remarried, right, maybe you have an ex-spouse or a spouse who's passed away, but if you get remarried, you can name your new spouse as the beneficiary of anything that you have. And when you are remarried, that spouse becomes eligible perhaps for your pension, for your 401k rollover, and for your Social Security benefits if you pass away. So a new spouse can be named as the beneficiary of any of those things. Keep in mind also that we talked a little bit about divorce. For anybody who's been married for more than 10 years, if you've been married for more than 10 years and you get divorced, you are eligible for your ex-spouse's Social Security. A lot of people don't know this. So let's just pretend I've got an ex-husband and his Social Security is $3,000 a month and we're divorced, but we've been married for more than 10 years. When it's time for me to collect Social Security, I can either collect my Social Security or I get 50% of my ex-spouse's Social Security, whichever one is higher. And what's interesting about that is it doesn't affect your ex. You don't have to even talk to your ex about it, but it is a benefit that you're eligible for when it's time to file for Social Security. And it's just worth knowing that your ex's benefit, which is 50% to you, or your own benefit, you could file for the higher of the two. A lot of people don't know that, and it's very helpful in a divorce negotiation when you understand the Social Security component of it.
All right, any other questions?
Well, thank you all for being here, for sitting through lots of information. I hope you've got a great to-do list of things to take from here, and I hope you'll join us for our upcoming sessions because we've got some great topics, very timely topics that we're covering over the next couple of months. Thanks so much for tuning in.